This story is going to contain mature themes and topics about things that younger viewers may not feel is comfortable for them to watch. So I advise extreme caution when watching this video and listening to the story. The above video shows Rick, trying to unalive himself, and it's unfortunate. And you can see just how heartbroken he is when you click on the link. So, in a situation much like this, Shefe actually did try to kill himself a few times throughout the various cycles and stages of the Grinion corruption that ravaged his body. There were times where he just sat there crying as psychosis and insanity raged through his mind. His soul was in turmoil and chaos as he felt torment on a level that was no normal person could ever even begin to imagine. His body and mind were fighting to stay alive and to keep stable while his soul wanted to let go and his spirit was crushed. He even tried to break into a military installation to find a bomb so he could just blow himself up with it. Luckily, the Grinster managed to locate and teleport to Shefe before pulling him into Worry's realm before he could detonate the bomb. The Grinster was discovered by Worry, who had seen him teleport in with a wide dinner plate eye woof. The Grinster was discovered by Worry, who had seen him teleport in with wide dinner plate sized eyes. The Grinster was mere nanoseconds away from being too late as the trigger of the bomb was almost to the tipping point. Seeing the Grinster on a stage of shock and horror was a sight that even Worry knew meant bad news. Worry stared back at the Grinster as both of them were silent. Only the whimpering of a poor Shefe could be heard inside of the thick fur of the Grinster, a poor and broken human. Another time, Worry came across Shefe trying to commit seppuku with the wakizashi that Worry gifted Shefe as a token of friendship. Worry couldn't help but feel sorrow for his little human as he laid down, placing his large paws around the poor crying human. The blade stuck out of Shefe's spine as blood trickled to the ground. Worry for the first time had sadness in his eyes, seeing his friend use the special wakizashi that he gifted Shefe in friendship to unalive himself. He gently placed his paws around the poor human and held him to his chest, trying to comfort Shefe. He would order one of his Grinions to pull the sword carefully from Shefe's body. As the blade was being pulled out, Shefe broke down into uncontrollable weeping. He just wanted to die, and his body, and the Grinion enhancements to his body prevented it. Worry closed his eyes, trying to drown out the muffled weeping of Shefe, as he tried to do what he could to give Shefe some level of relief and comfort. Unfortunately, due to him never having to actually comfort or care for somebody, he wasn't really sure what to do. He felt his primal instincts and urges to lick the human and even nuzzle them, but he just wasn't sure how. The Grinion held the wakizashi in his paws as he watched Shefe, and then looked at Worry confused and concerned, seeing his overlord in such a confused and uncomfortable state. So, seeing that Worry was seemingly trying to help the human, the Grinion proceeded to place the wakizashi in Worry's center right paw. Then he went over to Shefe and proceeded to gently stroke Shefe's head and even give him a little smooch. The Grinion wasn't sure exactly what to do, but he figured that maybe something was better than nothing. Shefe's unaliving tendencies came from him feeling like an abomination and a monster. He felt like he would be ostracized from his communities and be considered inhuman. Paranoia and insomnia ravaged the poor human as he lost sleep and sanity over the various curses of the corruption. There was even a time where Shefe commanded the Grinion battle-base warship to fire its main quasar beam at him to see if it would kill him. The battle base protested and defied the order as it explained to Shefe that his life was valuable and that the Lord wasn't done with him yet. This unfortunately threw Shefe into a fit of rage and hatred as he screamed, throwing anything he could get his hands on, and throwing stuff at the battle base. The horrifying face of the incredible beast wasn't a face of anger, but one of sadness and solemnness in seeing its creator begging it to kill him. Heckle was nearby, and she came across Shefe in the midst of his rage and insanity. She proceeded to pounce on Shefe and snuggle him tightly. Her poor, simple mind, not knowing why Shefe was in such a distraught state, but she knew that if she could offer him some level of comfort, maybe she could make things better. So, despite Shefe trying to swing at her to make her let go of him, she held on tightly and rubbed her soft and fluffy muzzle on his face, giving him her infamous fluffy smoochies. She cared for Shefe, and even though she had a simpler personality, she went to her friend's aid with all that she had. She kept him in her arms until Shefe tired himself out and fell asleep out of exhaustion. Her heavy breathing could be heard as she whimpered out of concern for Shefe. She wasn't sure how he was going to be when he woke up. So like a little scared child carrying an unconscious puppy to her father for help, poor Heckle ran to Worry, whimpering and scared, trying to find some level of solution to help Shefe's predicament. A last memorable attempt on his own life, Shefe was with his church on an outing, and he managed to find a shotgun. Remember, Shefe is able to do some weird stuff with his teleportation abilities. So Shefe always, keeps some weapons on him, since he has to deal with some very evil people on occasion. And when he deals with those evil people, it comes at the weirdest times of the day. So, Shefe turned the gun onto himself after finding a secluded spot where he thought that no one would know, and he pulled the trigger. Fortunately, due to the incredible amount of enhancements and abilities that Worry give to Shefe, the blast only mildly deformed his face, knocking Shefe senseless as he fell to his knees in a state of shock. His body quickly recovered as the Grinion regenerative properties kick in, healing his wounds in as little as a few seconds. Unfortunately, due to the blast of the large gun, Shefe had fallen unconscious for a few minutes as his body worked on trying to regain control. He came to his senses, seeing the horrified faces of his fellow church members, as they saw what the blast had done to his face and the progress of the regeneration. One of them knelt down and hugged him tightly, crying, begging Shefe to never try to unalive himself ever again. Shefe sat there on the ground with a blank look on his face, as sirens could be heard in the distance as medical response teams were en route to help Shefe. Shefe spent 3 days in the hospital under close watch, as doctors were baffled at the completely healed damage of Shefe's wound as they observed the emotionless human. Worry himself had enough of the humans failing to provide Shefe with sufficient help, and proceeded to open a gateway and pulled Shefe through the ground and into his own realm. He proceeded to then work with the Grinster to help rehabilitate and fix Shefe to get him back to his stable state. The Grinster made sure to let the church members know that Shefe was in good hands, and that he would hopefully be back with them for the next week's service. Remember, with the Grinion abilities and the supernatural properties, they are able to do things in mere moments that would take a normal person years upon years to accomplish. Prayer chains were set in place to pray on Shefe's behalf for his healing and care and deliverance from this horrible state that he was in. And you know what? The Lord listened with a tentative and loving ear, and proceeded to use his divine power to heal the pieces that were needed to be fixed, that even the powerful wolf warrior himself couldn't fix. Shefe then started undergoing a rapid supernatural renewal and restoration that was beyond what the Grinster or Worry had ever seen before. Although Worry was incensed and annoyed that God was showing him up, he did have happiness in his heart seeing that Shefe was finally getting better and was being restored. The grinster chuckled as he enjoyed seeing Warrior annoyed, but he smiled, closing his eyes, and said a silent thank you to the Lord for listening as he too, a creature of nearly unfathomable evil and malevolence, had prayed in desperation on behalf of his friend Shefe. Once the prayer chains had commenced, and the supernatural healing of Shefe had gone underway, Shefe was now starting to enter a new state of living, and the horrific, unaliving cycles had been ended once and for all. Shefe would still be going to have much more hardships due to the Grinion corruption and other issues that he was dealing with, but he now had a new level of fortitude and strength that would keep him from spiraling out of control for the foreseeable future. The grinster smiled as he embraced Shefe doing his medical procedure, as he lay there while Worry was taking broken pieces of his body out and putting new ones back in. Unfortunately, as new pieces of Shefe broke, they would have to be replaced with these kind of Grinion amalgamation kind of pieces that Worry would have to make on the spot. So Shefe, as this was going on, was becoming less and less human. His appearance was still mostly human, but everything inside was turning Grinion, because that was the only way to keep him alive. So, the grinster knew that Shefe was now in a better spot, and he was happy to know that the Lord had heard his plea. A rare and an unexpected part of the grinster, a small moment that would shine brighter than the brightest supernovas.